and welcome to another edition of Academic Matters. I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at Salle University. My first guest on today's program is Dr. Jan Ambrose, who is the Chair of the Finance Department here at LaSalle. Jan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Joe. It's nice to be here.
Great. We're glad that you were able to join us. For folks at home who aren't familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to LaSalle, how long you've been here, and what keeps you coming back every day?
Okay. I got to LaSalle in the spring of 1991. I had come to Philadelphia for graduate school. I grew up in Ohio, but I got a fellowship to get my PhD at Penn from the S.S. Huebner Foundation for Insurance Education. So my background is mostly in risk and insurance. As I was finishing up there, I got a call from LaSalle. They have a risk management minor program with the finance department, and they were looking for someone with my kind of expertise. Mm-hmm. So most insurance programs around the country are housed within a finance department. There's not a lot of standalone risk and insurance departments. So many of us end up in finance departments, and so we also tend to study finance topics along with the risk and insurance fields. So it was, a perfect situation for that.
Okay.
And I loved Philadelphia, and I didn't want to go anywhere. I came here for grad school and have never left since. LaSalle, when I did some research, I discovered was probably exactly the kind of institution I had been hoping to go to. It's got a nice balance of both an emphasis on teaching, but also on research. It's a nice kind of smallish to medium size, so you actually get to interact with your students a lot. Because I found that, going to Penn, there was a lot of very, very research-driven students there who wanted to go to top-tier research schools and really were hoping to never have contact with an undergraduate student.
Right.
Yes, and that was definitely not what I was looking to do. So LaSalle had a really great balance, and I felt really comfortable here when I came onto campus, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. And how long have you been chair of the finance department?
I think it was the fall of 2006 that I started. So it's been, about 6 years now.
6 years, okay.
We tend to rotate it around, but there's not really anybody else to rotate it to at the moment. So lots of people have already done their turn, and we're waiting for some of the younger faculty to get up to that point.
Once they move up in terms of level of seniority and are able. Okay.
Exactly.
You've had some recent curricular changes in the finance department?
Yes, we're really excited about the major. For a long time, finance has been kind of just a traditional corporate finance view, and we were discovering that the careers in the industry was really getting much more sophisticated in terms of career paths and specific areas of specialization. And a lot of students, I think, were kind of unsure of exactly how they would take a finance major and go in the various directions that were available to them. So we thought it would be a good idea to take the finance major and maybe structure it in such a way that would really help them define a career path. So we've developed 3 different tracks within the major. The first one is the investment and financial analysis track. Okay. And it really seeks to train students to do some financial analysis of other companies, primarily with, in thinking that they will either work on the buy side of the investment world. Maybe they'll work for a hedge fund, a mutual fund, an institutional investor, banks, trusts, pension funds, those types of things. And they'll really need to understand how to analyze companies to make the determination whether or not they should invest in a particular stock.
Okay.
They could also work on the supply side and maybe go into the investment banking world or stock
kind of
brokers.
Selling their company in
Yes,
a sense, right?
yes. So helping bring securities to the market. And then there are other variety of institutions that they could also work for that really manage the in-house investments of a particular firm. Okay. That particular track is exciting because we are hoping that students will take the Chartered Financial Analyst exam the level 1 exam right when they finish their senior year. We've got the curriculum designed so that it really prepares them in a serious way to sit for that exam.
And we've just started, we offered it the first time last year?
Correct.
And had a pretty good success rate?
We did. In our first year, the national pass rate for that exam is somewhere in the 35% range. And in our first year, we had a 55% pass rate. So we were very proud of that.
Great.
And so, we're hoping to grow that program and get a lot more students interested over time.
Okay.
So that's the first track.
That's the first track, yeah.
Second track we have is the risk management track, which I think over the course of the last few years we've seen there's lots of financial risks out there, and sometimes they kind of blow up in the wrong direction. So many different firms are, seriously in need of being able to analyze the risks that they face and plan proper techniques to try to mitigate those risks, whether they be strictly financial ones, whether they be physical risks, with their property and plant and things like that.
Different liabilities that I guess
yes,
companies could face,
all kinds of types of risks. And the risk management track really prepares students for figuring out how to identify those risks, figuring out how to analyze them, what options there are to handle them, how to select the best option that will be most financially advantageous to the firm. And those students have career options in, again, lots of different areas. They can go directly into the risk management industry with a variety of different types of firms. They're great candidates for working for insurance companies, but then there are also lots of firms who just need to manage their own risks.
Sure.
So they can go in-house with a variety of different options and industries and.
I know in the healthcare field that's just
yes.
an area that's ripe for anybody in that risk management.
Absolutely. So yes, and one of the courses we teach, employee benefit planning, I get to teach that one of my favorites. We spend a big chunk of time on health benefits that employers provide, how to try to manage their costs, and it's been exciting with new
with healthcare law and
healthcare laws
changes
coming
going
in.
on, right?
Yes, so lots of changes to that.
So risk management is track number 2. What's
Yes.
the third track?
The third track is what we call the managerial finance track, which is probably the more traditional of the finance tracks. It does focus a little bit more on the corporate side of finance. I mean, typically, the traditional idea of corporate finance would be you're really trying to determine how to raise money and what a firm should spend that money on. So they're making those types of decisions. And so that's kind of the core of that track. But that track has the most flexibility to it. There are 3 required courses and then 2 other electives that you can choose from any of the finance courses. So a student can really kind of take the courses in the particular areas they're interested in. If they don't feel that the investment and financial analysis track or the risk management track is exactly what they're looking for. The managerial track is much more flexible, and so it can accommodate lots of different interests.
Now, in addition to those are undergraduate.
Yes, correct.
Do you also offer a couple of courses, at least in the MBA program, or is there a track in MBA?
Yes, at the MBA level, finance is the most popular specialization. So we do draw lots of students to our particular courses. And I think a lot of times when students get out into the work world, they really discover that everything has a financial component to it, and they really need to understand that to be successful at their job. So I think that's why we get so many people. But we also have complementary, they aren't tracks per se at the MBA level, but you can still, take the courses that would get you ready to sit for the CFA exam within the MBA program. And then there are a couple other risk management types of courses that are offered. So, it isn't a track per se, but there are similar types of options within the MBA.
Okay.
Yes.
So if students or folks at home are interested in that, they can just go to our website, I guess, go to the MBA program or go to the Department of Finance.
Yes, they can find lots of information there. And I should also mention that we also have a risk management minor program that's housed within the finance department. So students of really any major can also do a minor in risk management.
So if we were talking about that healthcare student who was in health studies or public health,
absolutely, they could do a risk management minor.
Okay.
Yes. So
Jan, where are we placing our students? Are there opportunities for internships or co-ops?
Yes, we have a lot of students who do internships, co-ops, some of them for credit, some of them, on their own. And so, but we see them in a variety of places. Fortunately, Philadelphia has lots of employers in the financial services industry, so there are many opportunities. We've got lots of people who go to insurance companies, to banks, to mutual funds, Vanguard, firms like that. We have people who go to Johnson & Johnson, ACE consulting firms. So, there's really a wide range of employers that I think are very happy with the performance of LaSalle students as interns and are happy to work with us.
And you're taking advantage, I guess, of the alumni network.
Oh yeah,
oh
yes,
okay.
yes.
That's great. We only got a couple minutes left. We briefly mentioned a little bit of your research. You're doing some stuff in banking. I guess that's tied to...
Yeah, right now I'm working with one of our newer faculty members, Elizabeth Cooper. She's done a lot of work on compensation of CEOs in the banking industry. Given that my field is more industry or insurance related, we've kind of taken that study and are applying it to the insurance industry now.
Okay.
There's lots of, again, with all of the financial news over the course of the last few years, executives being paid exorbitant amounts only to have their firms fail, and we're trying to kind of tease out, what types of incentives really work to get the CEOs to act in the best interest of the stockholders and really keep the firm on an even keel.
Are you finding one industry pays better than the other?
Can't really say that so far.
Okay.
Yeah, the results might be a little early for that. Yeah, I'm not really sure I haven't looked at the actual raw numbers of compensation to compare from one to the other.
Okay. But that'll be coming out of that study too.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
Well, Jan, thank you. We're just about out of time, but I appreciate you coming down and telling us all about the programs.
Thanks,
and it sounds like
for
a lot of
having me.
exciting things going on in the finance department.
Yes, there are. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay.
My guest has been Dr. Jan Ambrose. She's the chair of the finance department at LaSalle University. When we come back, I'll be joined by Dr. Michael Boyle, who's in the political science department here at LaSalle. Please stay tuned.
At what age is the color that your skin was meant to be no longer beautiful? Every year, millions of young women try to change the skin they were born with and say they'd die for darker skin. Sadly, some actually do. Melanoma is the second most common cancer in teens and young adults 15 to 29. And one person dies from melanoma every hour. It's time. Change your thinking, not your skin. Stop tanning. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Savings Man here with a story for you about two young spenders named Tommy and Sue. Their parents let them buy whatever they chose, like video games and designer clothes. As they grew older, they spent all their pay on fancy cars, houses, 2 lattes a day. They lived in the moment, never saving a dime. When they tried to retire, they'd run out of time. Working forever is Tom and Sue's fate, so choose to save now before it's too late. Visit our website to find out more, 'cause a happy ending's worth saving for.
They call them the golden years, and for many seniors, they are. But for too many others, retirement is like a prison.
Do you have any jacks?
The difference? This couple saved for their retirement, and this couple didn't. It's your choice. Choose to save. To learn how to get started, get your free Power to Choose brochure, because your retirement can truly be your golden years.
Welcome back to Academic Matters. Once again, I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. My guest during this segment is Dr. Mike Boyle, who's in the Political Science Department. Mike, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And in a sense, welcome back to LaSalle. You're also an alum.
I am indeed an alum. Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, well, tell us about that, how you went from an undergraduate to graduate student to faculty member here at LaSalle.
Well, I'm originally from Philadelphia. I was born and raised in Northeast Philadelphia, and I went to Father Judge High School. And then I came to LaSalle in 1994 as an undergraduate and graduated in 1998. And I did a joint political science and English degree, actually. And then I left Philadelphia and left LaSalle for 12 years. And went over and lived in England for 7 years, lived in Australia for a year, and bounced around the United States in various academic positions. I wound up doing my doctorate at Cambridge University, and I did a master's at Harvard. And then spent a number of years as a fellow in various institutions. And then I taught in St. Andrews in Scotland before coming back to LaSalle in 2010.
Okay, how long were you in St. Andrews?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years. And I never learned how to golf. So I have no ability to do that.
Ill-spent time.
Ill-spent time, that's right.
Yeah, and I remember it was around that time that I tried to hire you at Seton Hall.
This is true, you did. This is true, that's true, absolutely right.
And
and now we wound up both back here. We came back at the same time.
So it really has worked out.
Absolutely.
In a sense. Mike, what areas do you teach in? What areas of research are you studying?
My main area of research is international relations. That's mainly what I do. In the department, I teach a combination of things. I do teach international relations classes. I taught classes on terrorism and political violence and revolutions. I've taught classes on security studies. I've also taught classes in American government, so introductory courses in American government. And I also teach the senior seminar course, where we try and get our students to write a 40-page research paper by the end of their senior year. So we really try and get them to produce an original piece of research.
Okay, what kind of topics are students writing?
Well, that's one of the things I really love about teaching the senior seminar, is that you get lots of different topics. So I have students writing on women in politics, students writing on the insurgency in Afghanistan, students writing on Al-Qaeda and terrorism, other students working on things like electoral politics in Europe. And so it really challenges me a lot to have to go read a lot of different kinds of literature to be able to give them some sense of what they can try and do. And it's quite exciting to watch students come with an idea in September, October, think they will never be able to produce something that they're really proud of, and get something they're really proud of by May.
Okay, so it is a year-long program.
It's a year-long seminar where we work with them in the first semester to try and produce some literature review,
and
then the second
methodology
semester,
type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and the second semester is what they write.
Okay. Now, are you able to teach the things that you're doing research on in the classroom, and what are you currently working on?
Well, I'm working on a couple different things at the moment. I do get a great opportunity to sort of double up with my teaching and my research here. I'm trying to finish off a book that I've been working on for a number of years on violence in post-conflict states. And that's something that I've worked on for a very long time. I did original field work in Kosovo and in Bosnia and East Timor, looking at how those societies get violent in slightly different ways. So to what extent you see strategic or political forms of violence versus other forms of violence, and then what really consequences that has for the peace settlement. So I've just finished a manuscript on that does a bunch of case studies as well as cross-national data.
Okay.
And then I'm also working on pieces now having to do with contemporary U.S. security policy. So I'm working on an article right now on drones and the use of drones in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Okay. Well, it sounds like your earlier research is just going to continue with developments in Egypt and Libya and all these other places that have gone through some uprisings and now are trying to settle and come into what is it conflict, or what did you?
It's post-conflict violence. And it's a really interesting field because there's not been a lot of work done on this. But one of the things that I found in the book is that a lot of societies in post-conflict societies get violent not along the lines of the war, but because of factional bargaining, because the rebel groups that fought the war decompose and actually begin to fight for the spoils of the war. And what you get are these kind of complex bargaining games between people who were once allied actually in the war themselves.
Okay.
And you can see that very much in Libya. A lot of the problems that the U.S. has had in Benghazi has to do with Libyan militias militias that fought together to overthrow Gaddafi and are now engaged in this kind of sectional violence in the eastern part of the country.
And I guess with the amount of weaponry that's there, especially after fighting a civil war, that people are very reluctant to give up their arms.
Absolutely. One of the things about post-conflict states that's so interesting is that they're primed for violence in some way, because you have a society that is largely very low sort of rule of law, very low standards for the rule of law, lots of available weapons, lots of people trained in violence, and a lot of proximate motivations for violence. So compared to a lot of other weak societies, that class of states is actually uniquely violent. And you can see this in Libya, you can also now see this in Egypt.
Wow, really exciting stuff. And you can just apply that, pick up a newspaper, and that's what you're teaching in class.
Yeah, and so I'm getting a chance to bring some of that into the classroom, and I've talked to some of the students, and one of the things I've done with the senior seminar is try and talk about some of my own problems in research and some of the things I've done when I put my chapters together to give students a sense that faculty work through these problems as well as imposing upon them upon students when they have to write a paper, right? So this is something that we all work with.
And misery loves company.
Exactly.
Your second area of research you're doing some work on is drone warfare.
That's right.
Explain to folks at home who may not know what a drone is and they're thinking R2-D2 or some kind of robot.
Drone warfare is really interesting if you take a look from the vantage point of sort of security studies and what the U.S. is doing. The United States has launched about 330 drone strikes in Pakistan since 2004.
And these are unmanned flying vehicles,
Unmanned
right?
flying vehicles controlled actually from sites in Arizona and in California. And they're flying these weapons, these sort of unmanned vehicles, over Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, and dropping bombs on terrorist targets. And there's a really interesting scholarly debate at the moment about whether this is actually a good form of warfare because they appear to be more discriminate and they obviously don't risk U.S. personnel, or whether in fact actually this is a really kind of problematic form of warfare because there's a moral distance associated with just sort of pressing a button like a PlayStation button and then essentially taking a human life. And so I'm really interested in that and the extent to which robotics is actually creating a kind of distance in warfare. And that's what you're really beginning to see with drones. Yeah,
there's been some of that research done in comparing different sections of the armed forces, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the grunts of the Army or Marines versus pilots at 40,000 feet dropping bombs and feeling less stressed about the war or questions of morality, I guess, personal morality. Are they some of the issues you're looking at?
They are. I mean, if you start to look at what's really happened with warfare, so you go back to warfare in the Second World War, it was a lot more proximate. That is to say, you often saw the whites of the eyes of the other person. And what you're beginning to see is technology is allowing you to see that less and less. So if you get to Kosovo, you're dropping bombs from 30,000 feet, but you're not actually putting troops on the ground. Now you're in a situation where you have young kids using controllers that are shaped like PlayStation controllers, dropping bombs on people in foreign countries. And it's been this interesting question about whether they feel a degree of sort of stress associated with that, whether that moral distance makes them more indifferent to the suffering that's been caused. And one interesting question is whether we're becoming too relaxed about the use of violence because it imposes so few costs on us. If our people aren't, in fact, being inflicted with any kind of harm, would we resort to that form of warfare more often?
Yeah, really a great question, too, because that's been the reason that we're often hesitant to either go into conflict areas and often the reason why we want to get out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
Which often undermines our policies for long-term stability in a particular region.
Absolutely. And this is very attractive to democratic publics because you can run an unmanned aerial vehicle that doesn't risk any U.S. personnel, that doesn't cost a lot of money in terms of taxpayer dollars, and still inflict a lot of harm. So you can see why democratic publics find this weapon very attractive. On the other hand, there's a real question about whether we can use it too indiscriminately, whether we can be careless about the human lives that we're costing with it. And I think that's a really interesting moral set of questions. And what's interesting is that the technology is outpacing the politics. So what we're seeing is technological change that is so fast that politics and the moral questions can barely keep up.
Yeah, what did you say? There were over 300 strikes?
300 strikes in Pakistan. And the degree to which we're not aware of that, the degree to which the average American person is not aware that the United States government has launched 330 strikes on the country which we're nominally at peace with. And that's a really interesting problematic form of warfare. And there was a talk just this morning in the Washington Post about starting to resort to drone warfare in places like North Africa, because it's a low-cost way of trying to take out terrorist operatives. The question is, we're not going to be the only person who has that technology. In a matter of time, the Russians, the Chinese, and others will have that technology. And what kind of world are we bringing into being if that's the way we're choosing to fight our wars now?
Yeah, it raises lots of questions in terms of morality and even foreign policy and how we're going to conduct that.
Absolutely.
We've only got a couple minutes left, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a political question or two.
Okay.
We've got a big presidential race coming. What's going on in presidential politics, at least from a political science perspective? Can you give us a preview of who's going to Win in November?
I don't think I can do a prognostication about who's going to win. I don't think I feel comfortable with that. I mean, the polls say at the moment that President Obama is likely to win. I think what struck me watching this has been the influence of money in the election, the growth of the super PACs, and the extent to which the Democrats, who said for a long period of time that they weren't interested in that kind of financing, are suddenly now embracing it because they recognize that's the game that they're actually in. And I think there's really some worrying trends in this. The extent to which outside actors have been trying to buy their way into the presidential elections, the washing of money in from special interests on both sides. There is a real question about whether this is becoming less about making my policies attractive to the public and more about making my policies attractive to donors.
Mm-hmm. And you see that, yeah, more and more of those private meetings, and candidate walks away with $10 million, and you have to scratch your head about.
You do. You have to wonder about what's going to happen with our democratic process, because you wind up becoming a situation where the political process becomes almost oligarchical. And it's the people at the wealthy at the top have more of a vote than the people at the bottom.
You know, and then on top of that, an economic system where the wealthy are getting wealthier and the middle class is static or decreasing.
Exactly. And I think that's also why there's been a lot of sort of disenchantment with this election. The extent to which you see the candidates not really engaging in substantive policy debates, running away from things like the war in Afghanistan, running away from things like the issues in poverty, the extent to which there's money involved in influencing their positions. I think you've really seen this sort of mass checking out of the American public, where people really don't feel that either party represents them. Mm-hmm. And so there's been a sense of disgust with the election.
Well, Mike, this is great, and if our students are getting this in their classroom, they're really being well served.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
It's been great. My guest has been Dr. Michael Boyle, who is assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at LaSalle University. And once again, I'm Joe Marbach. I'm the provost here at LaSalle. Thank you for watching.